Gracious God, may the words that I speak, the thoughts and insights of our hearts and minds be acceptable to you, you who are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Dr. James McDonald is the senior pastor of a mega church in the Chicago area. And a while back, on a Sunday morning, Dr. McDonald dressed himself up as a homeless person, put on old, raggedy, beat-up clothes, made himself look dirty and disheveled, and went and parked himself right in the front entrance of the church that he was the senior pastor of. Sat down on the sidewalk, put out a little cup and a sign, "Need food." So that hundreds of worshipers, as they came into worship that morning, had to walk right past him on their way into the sanctuary. And as people walked by him, many did exactly that. They just walked on by as if he didn't even exist. Some of them were so uncomfortable with the situation that they actually walked to the other side of the street and walked around and made a U-turn and came into the sanctuary another way. And some of them stopped, talked to him, said good morning to him. A few people gave him some food, some people gave him some money. Unbeknownst to the worshipers who were filing into church, all of this was being videotaped. And when it was time for the service to begin, Dr. McDonald got up as he was dressed, walked into the service with the videotape, and proceeded to play it to the congregation as the introduction to his sermon. And so people were able to see themselves walking by and ignoring him. People were able to see themselves hustling to the other side of the street to avoid him. People were able to see themselves stopping and saying good morning, or God loves you, or have a good day, or here's a couple of bucks for some food. It's easy to love those who love us. It's easy to love those who are exactly like us. It's easy to love people who aren't asking anything of us. But that was not the way of Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus spent an inordinate amount of his time with the hurting, with the marginalized, with those on the fringes of society. He was, after all, the one who said, "Those who are the least of these, inasmuch as you have done it for them, you have done it for me." A few years ago, I was an interim pastor in a church in Michigan. And I stopped in a coffee shop on my way to work, as I often did, to get some coffee and a donut or something. And there was a group of people who were almost always in there. It was a fairly large group of people, 8 or 10 folks. They were always there. They were always together. It was the same crowd. And this morning, I overheard them talking. And one gentleman in particular was talking about his church. Talking about what an incredibly great church he was a part of. All the dynamic ministries they had, all the programs that helped people grow in their faith, all the mission and outreach programs. He couldn't say enough good things about his church home. And then just a few moments later, how I'm not sure, he segued to Barack Obama, who was the president at that time, and began to spew horrible nasty things about Barack Obama. Not that he disagreed with his policies, not even that he thought he was incompetent, but that he was a horrible, malicious, evil person. The man was spewing all kinds of racist bigotry. And he culminated his tirade by declaring that Barack Obama was the Antichrist. And as I listened to this, the words from 1 John 4 that I just read for you a few moments ago were whirling through my head. If anyone says they love God but hates their brother or sister, they are a liar. For how can we say we love God whom we have not seen if we are not able to love our brothers and sisters whom we have seen? This commandment we have from him, says John, he who loves God will love his brother and his sister. Now these are extreme examples that I just shared with you. True examples, real examples, but extreme. And you may be saying to yourself, well, that's not me. I don't do those kind of things. And that may well be true. But the season of Christmas is a good time to ask ourselves, am I doing anything in my behavior or through my attitudes that is getting in the way of other people fully experiencing the love and the grace of God in their lives? Am I in any way an obstacle to God's grace rather than a vehicle of God's grace? Am I showing love, or are there some aspects of my life in which I hate? It was almost exactly a year ago now that George Herbert Walker Bush, 41st President of the United States, passed away. And whatever you thought of George Bush's politics or policies or leadership style, I think you will need to admit that he was a classy guy. He was a man of integrity. He had character. And when his funeral service was held, more than one person alluded to one of George's very favorite sayings. He used to love to say, hate corrodes the vessel that contains it. Hate corrodes the vessel that holds it. And that is so true. It is not just a matter of what our hate does to those that we hold animosity toward, that we hate. It is at least as much, and maybe more, a matter of what hate does to us. How hate affects us, how it corrodes our character. John was very straight, very honest. He said, don't be a hypocrite. Don't deceive yourself. It's easy to say, I love God, because God is up there and I've never seen God and I don't have to deal with God on a day-to-day basis. But the real test of your love of God is whether you show love for your brother and sister. And that is for all of your brothers and sisters. The good news of Christmas is that the angels declared good news of great joy for all people. No exceptions, no limitations, no exclusions. God's love is available to all. Maybe you're here this morning, not particularly because you want to be, but because somebody dragged you here. But you've got issues in your life, and you know it. Jesus came for you. Christmas is for you. Maybe you believe in Jesus, but you have a hard time with a lot of the theology and a lot of the teachings of the church. Jesus doesn't ask you to sign up for all of this. Jesus came for you. Christmas is for you. Maybe you're a Christian, but the institutional church just hasn't been that helpful to you in terms of growing in your walk with God. That's okay. Jesus came for you. Christmas is for you. Maybe you find yourself in the midst of some really self-destructive behavior, some counterproductive habits that are messing up your life. Jesus came for you. Christmas is for you. Maybe you're here every Sunday, in the pew, all the time. Maybe you're one of the leaders of the church, but you've got all kinds of deep-seated anger and resentment and hatred that is eating you up. Jesus came for you. Christmas is for you. The good news of the gospel is that Christmas and the good news of Christmas is not just limited to the institutional church. In fact, when we take a look at Jesus' life and his interactions, what was the one group of people that Jesus consistently had a bone to pick with or had a problem with? The institutional leaders. The good news is, the institutional leaders don't get to decide who's a part of God's family. Only God gets to decide who's a part of God's family, and God has widely opened the gates and essentially said, anybody who has any interest in whatever I have to offer, you are welcome here. I want you to be a part of my family. And that is, my friends, or at least it should be, why we say to each other at this time of year, Merry Christmas. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.